Green Bay, the home of one of the most historic teams in pro football, being the Packers, and home to arguably the greatest head coach of all time, Vince Lombardi. Not only the Super Bowl trophy is named after the guy, he was able to build one of the finest dynasties in pre-Super Bowl era football before retiring in 1967. Not only Green Bay is the home of the greatest head coach ever, but was also able to have the three defining generational talents at the quarterback position, and each playing in different eras of pro football. We all know how great Aaron Rodgers is. Many people say that he is known as the greatest thrower of football in NFL history. Now go back a decade or two, and you have the next generational talent, being Brett Favre. Brett Favre has not only claimed multiple MVP awards and Super Bowl appearances, he is also known as the top of his era when he played and threw an NFL record of 508 touchdown passes. Now that's great and all, but there is one more name I forgot to mention, and that was the quarterback people seem to forget sometimes, but made a huge impact for the team, and that last guy is Bart Starr. Some newer fans seem to see him as that wrinkled man that attends Packers games and gets recognized for some random reason. But don't get it wrong, he knows how to sling a football. So sit back and let me tell you a story about the first Packer great, Bart Starr. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. For those who are new here, I am Mark the Great, and welcome. If you don't know what I do NFL videos that cover various teams, players, and stories relating to the NFL and its history. So if you're into that kind of thing, then consider subscribing to the channel, as I do this thing every week and you do not want to miss out. Also, if you happen to like this video, then consider dropping a like on it, and that would be much appreciated. So anyways, on to the story of Bart Starr. Bart Starr, or Brian Barlett Starr, was born on January 9th, 1934, and raised in Montgomery, Alabama. Bart got his actual name Brian from his father's middle name, which is Benjamin Brian Starr, and his mom Lula Starr. Bart also had a brother, but he died of tetanus in 1946. Bart Starr attended Sidney Lanier High School in Montgomery, and in his sophomore year he decided to go out for football, but he quit 2 weeks later, and his dad gave him the decision to either keep playing football or work in his family's garden. So we all know he chose football. Though throughout high school he ended up making the All-State and becoming an All-American in his high school career, which got a lot of attention from other schools. Now originally Starr wanted to play in the University of Kentucky, but changed last second to play at the University of Alabama due to some love problems. During Starr's days in Alabama, he started playing during his sophomore season at quarterback, safety, and punter, and actually was pretty good at punting. Despite that, Bart Starr was out with an injury his junior year and was benched in his senior year. During the 1956 draft, Starr was selected with the 200th pick in the 17th round by the Green Bay Packers, and the rest became history. Starr was signed to a $6,500 rookie contract, and Starr accepted. For Bart Starr's first 3 seasons, he remained as a backup quarterback, or his time was split with another quarterback, until 1959, where Starr was announced as the full-time starter. Later in 1960, Starr had one of his finest seasons up to that point, as he threw for over 1,300 yards, and the Packers advanced all the way to the NFL championship in 1960, where they ended up losing to the Eagles. This was Lombardi's first and last playoff loss for the rest of his time there in Green Bay. In 1961, the Packers, led by Bart Starr and Vince Lombardi, went to an astonishing 11-3, and Starr had his best season, throwing a career high of 2,418 yards and 16 touchdowns. Not only Starr did great, but the Packers did as well, as they ended up winning the NFL championship that year against the Giants. Not only that, the very next year in 1962, Starr manages to repeat the same success and throw for even more yards and 12 touchdowns, and again the Packers end up going 13-1. Now, for some people who might know this, but the 1962 Packers defense was actually made my top 10 list of the best NFL defenses of all time. So of course that defense was a pretty big factor here. The Packers end up winning the NFL championship for the second consecutive time in a row, again against the Giants. Starr's success in Green Bay continues, as in 1966 Starr won the NFL MVP award and makes his history along with his Packers team, as they win the first ever Super Bowl, beating out the Chiefs in Super Bowl I. The height of Starr's fame came in 1967 in the NFL championship game against the Cowboys. Now, most people, this game is famously known as the Ice Bowl, and in this game, the most famous and well-known play was made from Bart Starr. Now, before this snap was played, there's a little background on the whole game prior to that famous play. The Packers started off hot here as they came out to a 14-0 lead over the Cowboys thanks to 2 Bart Starr touchdowns. The momentum of the game started to change in the favor of the Cowboys as they forced a fumble and returned it for a touchdown, making the score score 14-17 Packers. The scoring for the Cowboys continues as the Cowboys do a fancy trick play which led to another touchdown, tying up the score 14-14, which is a few minutes left in the game. The Cowboys eventually get the ball back and score a field goal, making the score 17-14 Cowboys. Bart Starr and the Packers had to score a touchdown and managed to drive all the way down the field in the coldest NFL game of all time. But despite that, Bart Starr and the Packers managed to drive down the field and make the play of the decade. However, this play call was very dangerous and ill-advised at the moment because 1. They had no timeouts and there was only 21 seconds left on the clock. 2. The play Starr called was a running play, which means that if they happen to not cross the goal line, the clock would tick down to 0 and they would lose the game. So needless to say that there was a lot riding on this last attempt effort to become and to win the third consecutive championship. But due to cold, probably made Vince Lombardi pretty impatient and decided to let Starr run the play as well. And you already know what happened. Starr got the Cowboys completely off guard and Starr got right in with the QB sneak. Well, it actually wasn't called that at the time, but it is called now, so yeah, there you go. The Packers ended up winning the game and move on to the Super Bowl II, where they ended up beating the Raiders 33-14 and become NFL champions for the third consecutive year. After the Super Bowl II win, one of the most shocking things happened for the Packers, and that was Vince Lombardi stepping down as head coach. Now, Bart Starr wanted to retire as well, but due to the fact that there was no right away leadership for the organization, he decided to play a little longer. Bart Starr would later have multiple throwing arm injuries in 1971, which limited his playing time by a lot, and realizing that he has no more left in him, he decided to call it quits and retire in the 1972 before the season started. Now, I don't want to hit on this too much because Bart Starr's coaching career was just disappointing, but I will touch on it a little bit, so let's talk about it. Bart Starr, immediately after retiring as a player, he became a quarterback coach for a long while until Christmas Eve in 1974, he became the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. Now, I made a previous video on Sterling Sharp, and I briefly talked about how the mid-70s and early 80s Packers were not good at all. Well, Bart Starr was head coach throughout that whole time, so let's just say he was not a great or a good head coach. Bart Starr had a coaching record of 52, 76, and 3, and went to the playoffs one time in which he went 1-1 in the playoffs. So in 1982, Starr was fired and was replaced by his former teammate Forrest Gregg, who previously coached the Cincinnati Bengals. In 1984, Starr was actually named as a head coach of an expansion team called the Arizona Firebirds, but the NFL declined its acceptance into the league, so that point marked the end of Bart Starr's coaching career. Overall, Bart Starr left a huge impact for the Green Bay Packers franchise, as he was able to bring home the first 2 Super Bowl trophies to the team. He has thrown for over 24,000 passing yards and 152 touchdowns as well. Starr went to 5 Pro Bowls, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, and the 1966 NFL MVP, and was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1977. Starr's numbers is also officially retired as well, and is in the Packers Ring of Honor. For those who don't know, Bart Starr ended up passing away in May earlier this year due to health effects from a stroke he had back in 2014. Although sad, Bart Starr is and always will be remembered as time passes on. Rodgers will retire and he will be known as one of the greatest quarterbacks in Green Bay's history, arguably next to Brett Favre, who broke many records and accomplished many things while being in the Green Bay uniform. But despite all that, there's always a player who paved the way to greatness and who started it all, or the first Packer great, and that is Bart Starr, the first Packer great. Alright everybody, thank you for watching the video and watching it through all the way to the end. Now if you happen to like this video, then of course leave a like on the video and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Peace out and thanks for watching.